Hello and welcome, my name's Pete, and you may have seen the overview video for a brand new stamp and spin tool. Well, what we're doing today, we're taking a deep dive into some of those techniques and showing you in a bit more depth. There are other videos on the hub as well, so go check those out. But today we're talking about pattern building. Now we know that the stamp and spin creates wonderful wreaths and creates circles. I am going to be using Lisa Jones's stamp. There are 4 in the set, which were designed specifically for this. And you can see some of them to either side of me here. But today's about pattern building. Now this is something that you can do really well with this tool that you may not have thought of before. So I'm going to take my tool, and of course it works with the stencil and stamp tool. You do need the stencil and stamp tool as the base, but go to the Sizzix website and find out about that. It is fantastic. I'm going to place a piece of card in the center, and I'm going to bring in this sheet of card, which kind of represents the stamp and spin tool, and it shows the markings that are on it in more clarity. Of course, now if you're creating wreaths, use these circles as a guide to kind of gauge the size of wreath you want to create. But from a pattern building perspective, and I'm going to choose, let's choose, we'll take this leaf. Now, it's all about the center. It's all about working out from the center. And with the wreath building, whereas you make 8 clicks. So these solid lines, they represent each click of the tool. With this, we are looking at the dotted lines. So we're thinking about a quarter. So this is 1, 2. That's a double click. Okay, it is really, really straightforward. So if I'm building a pattern, let's look at where I can put my leaf. Something like that. So it's towards the center, it's not right in the center because we are building from the inside out. So let's take that away for a second and bring my tool. Now, I'm going to put the leaf kind of there. As I said before, when we're building wreaths, there is no right or wrong. It turns out differently every time. I kind of know what's going to happen, but I don't know exactly. And that's part of the fun. It really is a journey of exploration. So I'm going to ink up, and I'm using archival inks. Use whatever inks you have to hand or whatever your preferred inks are. Then the tool simply slips onto the hinge there, and you place it down. Now, it's a stamp platform, so if that image was imperfect, I could simply re-ink and go back in. But it's pretty good. Now there you go, that's a double click. So we're not talking about single clicks anymore when we're building a pattern. And there, 1, 2, ink, 1, 2, and that is my first 4. Now, let's just take some kitchen paper or scrap paper, whatever you have to hand again, and take the ink from there, because you see this kind of a square that it describes in the center? That is what we call our negative space, and we want to kind of maintain that space. So if I put this in too close, it doesn't do that. So I want to come about there. Now, it doesn't really matter which way around I do this. And again, I could put it like that, like that. It's just, the more you do it, the more you build up a sense for what works and what doesn't. But I'm going to put that about there. So again, we start the whole process. So start with your stamp on the project. Bring the tool down, and of course these are cling stamps, so it just picks it up. Then I make a double click. And even though this is not a circle that we're creating, because of the circular movement of the tool, you'll see that visually it has a kind of harmony to it, and each layer that you add adds to that harmonious nature. Now again, imagine this is a diamond or a square. Well, let's see where we can fill in those spaces, and maybe, yeah, that's as good a place as any. And I could have done that in any one of a dozen places, and it would still look good. So back onto the hinge. Lift up the stamp, ink, and you know, if you want to go with colored inks, that's absolutely fine. If you want to vary the colors as well, that is fine. If you want to use distress inks and get a really mottled sort of watercolor effect, and you want to blend the inks on the stamp, that again is fine. And if you want to know about that technique, you can see on the wreath building one. So see how we're building this pattern. And so use my kitchen paper, lift off the excess ink, and I'm seeing a little gap here. Can you see that one there? So I'm going to put this like so, maybe. Yeah, that works. That works. So ink, stamp, double click. That's all we have to remember. And one of the great things about this tool is its intuitive nature. There's no, you don't have to pour through instructions and what have you. None of us like doing that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But again, we're building. We'll take my kitchen paper, take off some of that ink. So where can I go now? About there. And the size, you can work right to the edge of this piece of paper if that's what you want. Whoops, I dropped my ink pad again. We managed to save that one though. 1, 2. And normally, you know, if I'm doing this, if I'm creating a project, I tend to slow it down. I do it with a lot more care and attention. But it just goes to show that even if I'm whizzing through it, the results are great and they're really even. So take off my tool, dab away the excess ink, and I just keep going, keep building until I have the result that I want. Then, of course, once this is complete, you can trim it to size and attach it to your project. Use it as a background. Maybe you want to trim this down into a square and create a box lid, or the cover for a mini album, or it could be for a scrapbook layout. Whatever you use your pattern papers for, that's what you can use these wonderful patterns for. There's nothing to stop you adding some extra stamps in as well. So if you want to kind of fill the gaps with a smaller stamp, that's absolutely perfect. If you want to fill those gaps with, say you want to use grey ink in between, you can do that too. There are no rights and wrongs here, folks. I think we'll make one more because we can. And you can see we're getting towards the end of the circle now. So that kind of dictates the size of the project that you can create. And one more, double click, and there we have it. So that's it. That is a very, very basic pattern. Now, let's show you some examples. There we are. These are just patterns made using the butterflies from Lisa's collection, using one of the fruit stamps from Lisa's collection, that lovely foliage. Now, this is a different pattern, and that's something we're going to talk about in a little second. So I'll put that to one side. And finally, the leaves. Leaves, that's the one that we've just done. So you can see by trimming it down into a rectangle, or even like a bookmark shape, or a gift tag, or a square. There's no right or wrong again. That just black on white has a really kind of classy look. This one, the same flower. You can see that harmonious repeat. You can see the space between the flowers maintained as we go around. And that's just blue. And then finally, we have that one there with the leaves as we've just seen them. So if you want to use your watercolors or your solvent pens, that's entirely fine. And there's a little mini book there. With the fruit, incidentally, they create the most gorgeous patterns. And you can see I've used a really kind of free-form painting technique on that. So this is just some of those fruit. And this is a lovely one with the butterflies, which actually this hasn't found a home yet, but I'm going to get around to that at some point, I promise you. Now we've seen how to create there a basic pattern. Other things that we can do. So if I just take this off, and it's on my sticky grid sheet, which is a very low-tech sheet, which holds your project in place and it won't slip out of register. Sometimes with magnets you do get that, but obviously if your tool has size on it, your stamping platform, then you can't use bigger pieces of card. You can't work on bigger projects. That is the beauty of a tool like this. Now, there is another type of pattern which I want to talk about, and that is, so let's take this, because this time, if I bring my my print off, so if I put it there, I can create a lovely wreath with 8 clicks. Okay, smaller wreath there. Now we can do the pattern as we just did, but what I'm going to do this time is work from the center. Yeah, so we might start off with 8 and we might move into 4. I'll see how it looks. And again, we're kind of in the realms of the unknown. And this is, and how do we find out these things? By playing, by experimenting, by just having a go. So the center, obviously where the screw is, and I'm going to work from there and place my stamp, which is then picked up by the tool. So we're going to ink, and what's the single click give me? Yep, that's good. So this time we're building a pattern, but we're not doing the double click, we're doing a single click. So I'm going to go all the way around. So we're trying to flood this. Oh, there you go. Now, again, that's the beauty of a tool like this, is you can put it back in position, re-ink, and away you go. So, but we're not looking for perfection at the moment. I'm just trying to show you how to get the best out of it and how to create these lovely, lovely patterns. Now, there. That is 8. So we can build out from that. Again, this time, I'm going to put it coming in the opposite way. Like that. And we're going to do the 8 again. And 1. Now, bear in mind, there are going to be gaps. There's no doubt there are going to be gaps. But once this is trimmed to size, it creates the most wonderful pattern. Do this in, say, imagine this in more of, say, a very pale brown color or a gray. It will look absolutely fantastic. As we did with the butterflies and so on in that light blue. There you go. And one more. See what I'm talking about? Harmony. Look at that. Look at the way that almost forms a star. That's incredible. And you know what? This is, we didn't know exactly where we were going to go with this. It's still kind of guesswork, but I'm going to fill that space there by putting it like that. It picks up the stamp, we ink, and on we go. So we're going to go again for the 8. That's filling that gap beautifully. But again, the harmony that we talked about, that lovely balance that you get by using a tool rather than taking an acrylic block and doing this individually, makes a huge, huge difference. There we are. Wow, I really like that. That's really cool. We could carry on there, that way. You know, we could pop that in there, we could build out, but just imagine, right, if we trimmed that to size and framed it, and you're gonna get something like that going on. And you do get the sense that these are moving out from the center. It has a kind of a dynamism to it. But let's take another stem. Let's take this lovely flower. You can see that there. Now, if I do taking the same principle, building out from the center, and then adding these as we go along, and it does have a kind of a sort of a dynamic starburst effect. That's really cool for creating patterns. So I hope this has been informative and instructional. I think the big takeaway from this when we're talking about creating patterns is just play around, just have a go. You know, there's another way of building patterns. You can create wreaths from the center and work outwards in circles if that's what you want to do as well. It's one of those tools that it just dares you to explore the possibilities. We love our stamp and spin. Everybody loves our stamp and spin. It's multi-award winning. But this is one of several videos to try and help you get the best out of this. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon. I've been Pete.